together in multiple venues many times a year.
Sure.
So the Kansas City Fed at some point, this isn't my area, but this is my understanding of how it happened, they wanted a conference that was sort of like the academic conferences that monetary policy makers are used to attending in their former lives, maybe as teachers or something. They wanted something like that for the world's central bankers, not just U.S. central bankers, people who make monetary policy, people like Powell and others on the Federal Open Market Committee and that play other roles in the Federal Reserve System. So the intention was to disseminate the latest research among policymakers. It's no different than your doctor going to a research conference.
Sure.
Once a year, or your lawyer going to a conference of professionals where they get updated on the latest trust and estates litigation and developments and stuff like that. So it's a chance for them to get up to speed on the state of the art. It's a chance for us to hear the latest thinking from the chairman of the Federal Reserve. Not that he doesn't talk enough. Times were different when this, and I say that, I think we both feel like the Fed over communicates. We
Yes.
could all do with a little bit less. When this thing started, that wasn't the case.
Right. Yeah, you have to remember that really leading up to Bernanke, mostly Fed officials didn't really forecast what they were going to be doing. Bernanke was the first one. I shouldn't say necessarily the first one, but I think took things a step even further than any of his predecessors had.
The Great Recession changed. It was sort of like,
Sure.
It was our Great Depression. What we know as macroeconomics, the study of the economy, that started after the Great Depression because we had all these unused resources and all these unemployed people. People were starving. Crops were piling up. Nothing made any sense. So this new field was the Big Bang, as economists like to say. Nothing made any sense. Similarly, after the Great Recession, monetary policy stopped working. Interest rates were at zero. What more can you do? Bernanke recognized, because he's an accomplished academic, that there are other potential tools. One of them is the summary of economic projections that we talk so much about every roughly 12 weeks. So yeah, all these new things mostly came out of the Great Recession. I refer to the 2008-2009 mini depression.
So taking a step back and, we do get a lot of shots and interviews from Jackson Hole, and part of that's probably because pretty nice place to have a few pictures taken and video interviews done when you're talking about Jackson Hole, Wyoming. But beyond the basics of, where the United States economy is, there's a lot that's changed in the world economy over the last few years. Inflation globally still a little bit too high. Government balance sheets, I don't know if you want to call it unsustainably laden with debt, but certainly much more heavily laden with debt than prior to the pandemic. You have growth that's generally slowing, unemployment that's generally low. I mean, what are the discussions in your mind that are most important to take place at the symposium this year, other than the obvious questions that are going to be asked about, okay, Jerome, when are you cutting rates, and is it going to be 25 or 50 basis points?
The academics who are going to be presenting at this thing, because they invite people from prestigious
Professors
colleges. People doing state-of-the-art
Researchers.
research. Tell us what you're working on. Tell us what we could be doing differently. In that sense, they're to be credited because they welcome dissenting opinions, different thoughts, stuff like that. I think the topic is what monetary policy types, and monetary policy is a fancy way of saying what interest rate should the Fed set to facilitate highest possible unemployment and stable inflation. That's monetary policy. How much should they grow the money supply, which ultimately dictates the rate of inflation. The topic this year is something like the monetary transmission mechanism. And that's
English.
That
Translate
sounds,
it for us.
I was going to say, it's a lot like the transmission in your car. What does it do? It sends power from the engine, which is rotating one way, to your wheels, which are rotating a different way. So it's going to go down a shaft. It's going to make a left. And things can sometimes get gummed up. And you don't know where the problem is.
Sure.
The monetary if you think about money entering the economy through banks, it's going to go through a bunch of pipes before it gets to us. That's the transmission mechanism. Now, the economy changes structurally over time. We all know this. Does the transmission mechanism, so to speak, does money get transmitted from the Fed where it's created to our pockets where it's ultimately supposed to go in the same way, as effectively as it did 10 years ago, 20 years ago? If not, how has it changed, and how should the Fed react to those changes?
All interesting stuff. Let's take it back to the subject at hand, which is the Fed is expected to cut interest rates in September. This morning, or perhaps yesterday, we got this New York Federal Reserve labor market survey, does it change anything in your mind about expectations for the labor market? They did a survey of Americans finding that people reported leaving or losing jobs, marked down their salary expectations, increasingly thought that they would need to work past traditional retirement ages. The share of workers who reported searching for a job in the past 4 weeks jumped to 28.4%, which is the highest level since the data started. That's up from 19.4% in July of 2023. I personally have a tough time doing anything with this survey. I think it certainly doesn't contradict anything that I have been concluding about the labor market already from the jobs data, the unemployment rate increasing. But does this tell you anything differently? Does it likely change anybody at the Fed's opinion on the state of the labor market?
I don't know if it changes it. I don't know exactly where they're at. I do know that if you put lower expected wage growth into the models that these guys use, and I know we all snicker when we hear models. We think of a bunch of academics, ivory tower types, not living in the real world, but it's the only guide we've got. When you plug lower wage growth into your model, you get lower inflation, future inflation, expected inflation, all else equal. So this probably validates their thinking that they should be focused now more on risks to growth and unemployment than on risks to inflation, pushing inflation up.
I've got a very basic question. Why should I care about expected higher unemployment if I'm retired? I'm done working. I'm never working again. I'm living off my savings and Social Security and maybe a pension.
Yeah, I don't care if you're retired, your income is guaranteed and fixed. I don't care what the economy
Forget about
does.
it. Maybe not guaranteed
Why
and
economically? Why economically should you care? You mean?
No. Give me why personally.
As a citizen.
Maybe I am not reliant entirely on a pension. Maybe I have some 401k or something like that. Why should I care if the unemployment rate's 4.3 or 3.5?
Yeah, sure. Because the capital that's required for the research that's going to invent the drug that's going to prolong your life or maybe save it is more likely to be available in a buoyant economy than in a poor one.
Ooh,
That's why you should care. Full stop. I don't have anything. I mean, if somebody really takes that attitude, hey, I'm retired, I don't care. I go wherever I want. I saved, and I don't know why I'm doing it in the sort of Peter Griffin voice, but you know what I mean. If it's somebody sort of lively, because I'm from Rhode Island. That's right, originally. That's right. I don't think there is anybody out there. We're all sort of humanitarian and patriotic enough to recognize that a growing economy benefits everybody. But and you're going to want to sell your house eventually, or turn that equity into something liquid that you can spend. That's far more likely to happen in a good economy than in a bad economy. So you should care. Plus, you got kids and grandkids. You want them to prosper.
Even if I'm going to be completely selfish for a moment and just say I don't care about any of that. I don't care if society ends after I'm dead. Just the most selfish point of view ever. Even then, a higher unemployment might not lead to lower stock prices, but might coincide with them. Might coincide with them, and I would imagine if you were to map out unemployment against stock prices over time, big corrections and crashes have coincided pretty strongly with higher unemployment, and so I would argue that's why.
Yeah, since I'm on only occasionally, and you indulge me to talk about economics, there's this thing called Oken's Law. It's this relationship between you've heard the phrase. If you took an econ course, you remember Oken's Law.
Sure.
Some of you might even remember Oken himself. He was big in the 60s and 70s, much like myself. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I wasn't even around. He observed, it's one of these empirical regularities, to use another fancy term that only gets used on the show every 2 weeks. Nice. He observed that for every unemployment point, you lose 2 points of GDP. So there's this, it doesn't always work out that way, and that can be connected to stock market through earnings, which are the only reason you'd buy stock. So yeah, Mike, you're absolutely right. These things are all interconnected. There's another reason why you should care if you have equities. Let's
take a quick break. When we come back, we are continuing to march down the campaign trail. More campaign proposals coming up, some of them quasi-markets and economic related. I want to talk about a little bit of that when we come back, specifically regarding food prices, next on the Financial Exchange.
Get up-to-the-minute market updates with Wall Street Watch, weekdays at 10:30, only here on the Financial Exchange Radio Network.
Last year, we introduced you to Marc, CEO of Veterans Development Corporation. Marc is a career military man, and we're proud to have him back as the presenting sponsor of the 2024 DAV 5K Boston.
I am a proud partner of the Disabled American Veterans, Department of Massachusetts. The DAV does incredible work, and it was one of the first organizations I became familiar with after my military service ended in 1984. As I built my company, Veterans Development Corporation, I did it knowing that I'd be giving back to fellow vets who need jobs, support services, medical supplies, and much more. I work with disabled veterans every day, and is one of the key reasons why I'm such a big supporter of Dan Stack and the Disabled American Veterans, Department of Massachusetts, in this year's DAV 5K Boston. Please join me in supporting this tremendous cause by taking part in this year's event or by making a donation to the DAV.
Veterans Development Corporation is proud to be the presenting sponsor of this year's DAV 5K, taking place on Saturday, November 9th at Fort Independence in South Boston. To register for this year's race, visit dav5k.boston.
Recent reports suggest that a record 4.1 million Americans may retire this year alone. Hi, this is Mike Armstrong from the Armstrong Advisory Group, and if you're one of them, you'll want to have a retirement plan in place that focuses on several objectives. When to actually retire is a very important one to consider. Retiring early while giving you more time to enjoy life after work also means you'll need your money to last longer. Retiring later may not give you as much time to enjoy life's pleasures, but you'll have more time to save money. It's important for your retirement plan to strike a reasonable balance, and our new guide may help. It's called A Day in the Life of a Retiree, and it's yours free by calling 800-393-4001. The guide discusses these issues and more, so please call 800-393-4001. Once again, 800-393-4001.
The proceeding was paid for by Armstrong Advisory Group, a registered investment advisor. Nothing in the ad or in any Armstrong guide is specific financial, legal, or tax advice. Consult your own financial, tax, and estate planning advisors before making any investment decisions. Armstrong may contact you to offer investment advisory services. Summer in New England is spectacular. Winter in the U.S. Virgin Islands is even better. St. Croix, St. Thomas, and St. John are three of the most incredible islands anywhere in the Caribbean, and their popularity has soared over the past 3 years. If you're ready for your next fabulous vacation, now's the time to check out the American Caribbean. Go to visitusvi.com, where you'll find all the information you need to book a trip that you'll never forget. The St. Croix Crucian Festival runs from December 26th to January 4th. Celebrate New Year's on St. Croix and enjoy world-class cuisine, pristine beaches, a wide variety of water sports, and some of the greatest musical acts the islands have to offer. Travel to and from New England is simple, and your stay will be hassle-free because this is the American Caribbean. There's no passport needed and no money to exchange. America's Caribbean paradise is waiting for you. Go to visitusvi.com and make your plans today. That's visitusvi.com. Elder life planning can be overwhelming, so make sure you're prepared, or you could make costly mistakes that affect your overall plan. Irrevocable trusts are the most common type of trust that folks use for financial protection, and while they can be complicated to create, they help keep your assets safe because they contain specific protections that many of us need, like the possibility of eliminating your estate taxes. Gouging and Dolan are experts in elder law and taxation, and they can devise a plan that covers you in every area where issues can arise. Their new guide is called Unlocking the Power of Irrevocable Medicaid Trusts. Learn more about how these trusts can benefit your family by calling 866-848-5699 right now. That's 866-848-5699. Or you can request the guide right now by visiting LegalExchangeShow.com. The proceeding was paid for and the views expressed are solely those of Gouging and Dolan. Gouging and Dolan and or Armstrong Advisory may contact you offering legal or investment services. Gouging and Dolan and Armstrong Advisory do not endorse each other and are not affiliated. Miss any of the show? The Financial Exchange Show podcast is available on Apple, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Hit the subscribe button and leave us a 5-star review. This is the Financial Exchange Radio Network.
Marc, as time goes on, I suspect we're going to get more and more, I guess they would be policy proposals from both sides would be my guess. I saw one where Harris is proposing a 28% corporate tax rate. We'll dig into that at some point in the future. But one piece that has been getting a lot of takes from both Trump and Harris has been food prices. Trump did his press conference where he was holding up. Different food items had a.
All I could think about during that was that milk is spoiling. There were 3 gallons of milk.
You're wasting
sitting
a bunch
there.
of milk.
That's all I could think of. Who does that?
Nonetheless, it was just probably an empty bottle of milk.
No, somebody just went out and did the shopping.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. So in any case, I don't think it's a mystery to anybody that food prices are a lot more expensive. According to the government's own data, the consumer price index for food at home is approximately 27% higher in July of 2024 compared to July of 2019. So 5 years ago, food prices were close to 30% cheaper than where they are today, and that's grocery prices.
Overall is a little less than
Correct. The consumer price index for that same time period is about 22.6% higher. So food prices, did go up more than overall prices, and we are all experiencing it. My question, I guess the first thing would be, hey, food prices are higher than inflation. Is there some way that we can explain that specific to food prices? And the second piece would be, let's talk about price gouging laws and what that actually means, and is there any role to play here? But I have a tough time explaining why food prices in particular are up more than prices overall.
Yeah, demand exceeding supply is the short answer. So that's a relative price. When we talk about everything else, now we included food in the everything else. The right way to do it is actually to take food out of the everything else, but that's okay. But because food went up by more, everything else went up by less than that stated figure. A little technical, but I'm just saying that's a
fair point.
Nobody thinks we're total idiots. We get that. But the point is the relative price of food compared to, I don't know, shoes or whatever. That's the real price.
Gasoline,
relative
shelter,
price.
etc.
Food has gone up in a relative sense because we know everything else has gone down. Why is that? Because demand, and the short and oversimplified answer is demand has exceeded supply, and supply
more than
could
other
be
products.
Constrained.
Yeah.
It could be that demand was fine, but there was a negative shock, something bad happened to supply. There's a reason they exclude food and energy from core to get at the trend in inflation.
Supply side questions could be war in Ukraine.
It's usually
could be
weather-related.
Weather-related. It could be any number of things with food driving.
This was part of the problem in the early
faster.
In the 70s. It was just one kick in the pants after the other. Like anchovies disappeared. Chickens eat anchovies. I didn't know this until I read it in an econ book. Obviously, this helped push up food inflation, one of the many waves of special factors, so to speak, inflation during the 1970s. So it's more than a temporary thing if it influences expectations, works its way into wages, and creates a bad cycle.
So good examples of price gouging. When Martin Shkreli bought that AIDS drug and then jacked up the price by 1,000%. Not a whole lot of competitors in that space, not a whole lot of other drugs that can also treat the problem, and generally was described as price gouging. And I think I would agree. Is that what he served jail time for? I don't even know. But nonetheless, generally described as price gouging. When a hurricane rolls through Louisiana and certain grocery stores or convenience stores mark up the price of water by 1,000%, generally described as price gouging. Would anyone describe the price? Maybe they would. I'm genuinely asking, but would you describe anything that we've seen over the last few years in grocery prices as price gouging? Because I very much struggle with that and don't believe that's what we're seeing.
Well, people that have looked at it have observed that profit margins in, say, retail groceries are not any higher than they have been historically on average or than other industries. So they haven't grown faster than in other industries, nor are they higher than they have been historically.
And I would generally describe a higher profit margin as kind of a necessity if you're going to describe it as gouging. I would agree there.
That it should show up there.
Yeah.
I can't say that there aren't isolated instances of it. I can just say, according to the data, there's no evidence for it. And this article says economists disagree. They do not disagree. I don't know of any credible economist who says, some may say, well, it should be looked into, as they have and continue to. I know of no economist that says a price ceiling will do anything other than cause shortages, because then you get people who would pay more who can't get it. They're worse off. People who would produce more at the market clearing, so to speak, price can't do it. So you get these dead weight losses that they teach you about. You get these bunch of people on both sides, producers and consumers, who can't meet their needs. That's a loss to society. No economist, other than maybe some real fringy ones, think that price controls are a good idea. We've tried them. We've tried them in wartime. We tried them in the early 1970s. When they were removed, prices spiked. Happens every time.
It's also unclear that that's what the Harris campaign wants to do here. I will also say that they're saying that we're going to fight on price gouging, but then not really defining what that means.
It's a bad idea. This campaign is so full of bad ideas, from Trump wanting to sit on the Federal Reserve and lower interest rates so he can buy a building cheaper, to Harris wanting to impose. I don't think she has strong economic beliefs, which is ironic because her dad was a Stanford. He's a PhD and taught at Stanford. But I don't think economics interests her. She's a lawyer. So expect more silliness. You just have to pick the candidate, I think, with the least bad ideas at this point.
So the rules that she's proposing would, quote, bar companies from exploiting consumers to amass excessive profits on food and groceries. We just displayed that doesn't seem to be appearing right now, so maybe she would be giving more power to authorities to exploit or to charge that in the future, more power to the Federal Trade Commission to investigate and levy penalties. She would also try and block deals that the campaign said give big food companies the power to hike prices. So effectively saying that, hey, maybe it's monopolistic power that's to blame for higher food prices. To me, again, it's been a period of tough time for supply and a lot of demand because we all had cash in our pockets to go spend more money on food at home. We couldn't go out to dine in restaurants. That was probably impacting the demand side of the equation as well. And so I don't think it's shocking that we've seen food prices shoot up this much. Whether or not the Harris administration takes the blame for it and whether or not they have any solutions to it is another question. Quick break. Wall Street Watch is next.
Like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter @TFE Show. Breaking business news is always first, right here on the Financial Exchange Radio Network.
Discover the fish and farm market at the Boston Fish Pier. Open every Saturday from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. in Boston Seaport. From fresh seafood to juicy tomatoes and sweet corn to grab-and-go options, indulge in the peak of summer's bounty. Support local farmers and enjoy the freshest ingredients all summer long. Sponsored by Mass Farmers Markets, a nonprofit dedicated to championing farmers markets across Massachusetts. Find a market near you at massfarmersmarkets.org.
It happens all over Massachusetts.
Can you tie my shoes?
In every home and every community.
Be careful on your bike.
Learning can happen anytime, anywhere.
We'll see you at practice this weekend.
And no matter how learning takes place in your family's life, DESE is there as your partner. The Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. Never stop learning. Find out more at mass.gov/back-to-school.
Sponsored by the Massachusetts Department for Elementary and Secondary Education.
This Veterans Day weekend, help honor all who have served this country. Join us on Saturday, November 9th for the 9th Annual Disabled American Veterans 5K Boston. It's a run and walk to support the DAV Department of Massachusetts. Saturday, November 9th at DCR's Castle Island in South Boston. Together, let's honor all who have sacrificed for our freedom. Register or donate now at dav5k.boston. That's dav5k.boston.
Protecting your assets is your most important financial responsibility, and irrevocable trusts can help you. Keep your assets safe from probate and the nursing home by calling Cushing & Dolan right now at 866-848-5699. Get their new guide called Unlocking the Power of Irrevocable Medicaid Trusts. That's 866-848-5699, or request it online by visiting LegalExchangeShow.com. The proceeding was paid for and the views expressed are solely those of Cushing & Dolan. Cushing & Dolan and or Armstrong Advisory may contact you offering legal or investment services. Cushing & Dolan and Armstrong Advisory do not endorse each other and are not affiliated.
Cardiovascular disease is the #1 killer of women,
taking the lives of 1 in 3.
That's more than all forms of cancer combined.
For too long, heart disease and stroke have taken the lives of the women we love.
But we're not giving up because we have something better,
stronger, more powerful.
We have each other.
When we come together and go red,
the more power we have against our greatest health threat.
Visit GoRedForWomen.org today to learn more.
Environmental nonprofit Ocean River Institute is working with communities to tackle climate change with nature-based solutions that feature slowing water down and building more soil with grasses and plants. Research indicates that people acting in their own neighborhoods can build an inch of soil in a year and slow sea level rise down by as much as 25%. please visit oceanriver.org for more information on opportunities to make a difference and go the distance for savvy stewardship of a greener and bluer planet Earth.
Hi, this is Chuck and Mike from the Armstrong Advisory Group, and our guide this month is titled A Day in the Life of a Retiree. Mike, one of the key focuses of this piece is about how to figure out how much income you actually need in retirement and where you start tapping assets from. How do you make those decisions?
Yeah, don't you hate the rules of thumb on this, right? Like, oh, I'm going to need 80% of what I had before. The answer is that there is no rule of thumb. There's no good one that you can use to figure out how much income you are going to need in retirement. Do you have a mortgage? What sort of travel are you planning to do? Yes, you won't be commuting as much. Maybe you and your spouse can go down to one car, but if all of a sudden your plan is to dramatically increase your travel budget, that changes everything.
And when you look at other things that can matter, it could be, where's your family located? Are you planning on moving somewhere else? Do you have grandkids that you want to spoil? These are all things that are going to play into that discussion of how much money you need to retire on.
Yeah, no doubt. And so it really does start right there with assessing your retirement ability. It's what type of income am I going to need in order to just be happy. It's not necessarily about maintaining lifestyle. It might be a different lifestyle once you're retired, but will I be content with it? And what sort of activities and lifestyle am I looking for once I am done with that 9 to 5, once I'm done putting in the hours for working and saving for my future?
Our guide this month is titled A Day in the Life of a Retiree. The way to request it is by calling 800-393-4001. Again, it's titled A Day in the Life of a Retiree, and you can request it by calling 800-393-4001.
The proceeding was paid for by Armstrong Advisory Group, a registered investment advisor. Nothing in the ad or in any Armstrong guide is specific financial, legal, or tax advice. Consult your own financial, tax, and estate planning advisors before making any investment decisions. Armstrong may contact you to offer investment advisory services. Time now for Wall Street Watch. A complete look at what's moving markets so far today, right here on the Financial Exchange Radio Network.
The markets are mostly quiet, dipping into negative territory following yet another day of strong gains yesterday as investors react to more retailer earnings and await Fed meeting minutes due out tomorrow afternoon. Right now, the Dow is off by 92 points, S&P 500 down by 4 points. The NASDAQ off by 21 points. Russell 2000, I don't have it in front of me because CNBC is a piece of garbage from time to time. Can't find it. Don't have it. Sorry. 10-year Treasury yield down by 3 basis points at 3.83%. And crude oil up about 1%, trading just above $75 a barrel. Lowe's reported second quarter earnings ahead of the open this morning, beating expectations. However, the home improvement retailer slashed its full-year outlook, noting lower than expected do-it-yourself sales pressure in the macroeconomic environment. That stock currently up by 0.5%. More on Lowe's coming up here on the show. Meanwhile, shares in Paramount Global down by 2% following reports that media executive Edgar Bronfman Jr. submitted a $4.3 billion bid to acquire National Amusements, the company that owns a controlling stake in Paramount. This comes after Skydance Media and its partners reached a deal to buy Paramount last month. Elsewhere, Palo Alto Networks earnings and revenue beat expectations. The cybersecurity company also offered strong guidance for the fiscal first quarter and the year. That stock jumping by 7%. And Boeing said late yesterday it discovered cracks in the structure of its 777X test jets, the latest setback for the long-delayed aircraft. Boeing shares currently down by 3.5%. I'm Tucker Sylvan. That's Wall Street Watch.
Mark, there's a piece in the Financial Times that I have to call out as speaking of garbage that doesn't work. There's a piece from Chris Giles in the Financial Times. The world can't escape from a U.S. economy that has lost its anchor. And then I read the whole article. I'm not exactly sure what the anchor is, but I think it maybe was a stable political situation. So he concludes the article with this. Quote, when the choice is between a candidate that instinctively blames corporate excess and exploitation within a market system for inflation and one that trusts his own instinct and pet theories ahead of decades of experience, it is not surprising that the financial markets are jumpy. The post-election outcome is highly uncertain, not just regarding who will win, but also who will seek what they will seek to implement, and whether they have the legislative power to do so. There is bound to be more volatility in the months ahead. If you think that none of this sounds reassuring, you would be correct. Is there any presidential election in the United States over the last 50 years that you could describe, that you could not use this to describe? Like, this is just intended to scare people.
Donald Trump's position on the Fed, for example, is unusual. It's taken us 150 years, is not just us, but the entirety of Western civilization, to recognize that independent central banks are a good thing for controlling inflation. So to inject, and J.D. Vance has echoed this, as are others on this new populist right, whatever you want to call it. So, Mike, that is a big change, and I'm not sure why people in finance aren't up in arms about that proposal. It's as if he said, "I want to sit on the Supreme Court and adjudicate."
Yep.
It's that radical. Now, the Fed is not constitutionally enshrined, but neither was the Supreme Court's independence early on. I'm getting a little over my skis here, but you know what I mean. So that is revolutionary, Mike, and I'm surprised that more people aren't standing to attention and evaluating the seriousness of that. I think part of the issue with Trump is most people don't take a lot of what he says seriously.
Sure.
He's just kind of thinking out loud. So what about Harris? Price controls. Well, probably ineffective. Economically undesirable.
Also radical.
But we've had them most recently, say in the early 1970s. So not untested and untried, just a bad idea. So now, as to the market should be his assertion that the market should be reacting to these proposals or these assertions or statements, whatever you want to call them,
and that we should expect further volatility.
I think that's sort of weak until they crystallize. And until they're imminent, I wouldn't expect assets to start to price them in.
My point would be there is always something new. There's always something new and scary and different that we look at every single election, whether it's this one 4 years ago, 4 years before that, or every 4 years. And yes, there are positions and points here that may be more extreme than others, and I'm with you there. But scare pieces like this, I think, are generally hot
Mike,
garbage.
I think people need to be shocked into opposition to any candidate wanting to inject themselves into Federal Reserve interest rates. I think, and this is just because this is my
I
guess it's my hobby or area or thing which I pay most attention to, because
I hope it's more than a hobby, because you've kind of dedicated your whole career to it and then gotten a bunch of...
I don't consider... I'm an investment analyst.
I understand.
Our day job is we manage money for people.
Yep.
But part of estimating what assets will return is what inflation is going to be. So something like Trump's proposing be wildly destabilizing. I know it's a little arcane, and most people are going to vote based on concerns about immigration or inflation, not about his stance on the Federal Reserve, but it would be radical to say the least. I'm surprised it hasn't gotten more attention, at least in financial media. It is something you should be concerned about. Price ceilings and the welfare losses that likely come from those are a much lesser threat to our economic order, in my opinion, because they can be quickly reversed and they'll be specific to a sector. Inflation, which will almost certainly get out of control if interest rates become politicized. They are to an extent now, but only indirectly. Inflation would be a far worse condition to try to turn around than some silly price control, some silly price ceiling that could be lifted quickly.
New York Times piece today, businesses are already girding for the next phase of the U.S.-China trade war. It's been some time since we've reviewed this and been concerned about it, and again falls into the review of economic policy. Although in this case, I don't think we've gotten a whole lot of concrete campaign promises or pledges when it comes to trade on China. I suppose the Trump administration has said that they will slap tariffs on pretty much all goods and increase tariffs on all Chinese goods coming into the United States. How do you suppose businesses are preparing for this? Are they actually preparing for it, or is it being taken kind of lightly when it comes to U.S.-China trade?
Have we seen any evidence that businesses on any level are changing long-term plans? How can you again?
The Times found one company that makes giant signs, so big signs for events, and they've said, look, we have a lot of demand, but if there ends up being an even higher tariff on Chinese aluminum, then we can't make that's where we get the stands for our signs that we print here domestically. And if we get a bunch of tariffs, then we won't be able to import those sign stands, and therefore we aren't expanding today.
I mean, look, you know your market. These producers know their markets best. They know how price sensitive their buyers are. And there might be some room there, but at some point, people aren't going to pay us, X number of dollar markup due to tariffs over the current price. It's not worth it. They're not going to produce the good. I don't know what to say.
Yeah, to me, I
don't like them.
U.S.-China trade, I don't really like tariffs as an overall economic tool. I recognize why they exist for certain specific actions, like China heavily subsidizing their electric vehicle industry, for example, and Europe proposing a massive tariff on that type of thing, and national security concerns is the main reason that I would argue tariffs are reasonable. Nonetheless, the story to me is that this is another one of those issues, like, I guess, tax on tips, that both parties seem to agree. Maybe there's some slight differences in terms of the directionally where they will go, but you're not going to hear something from Kamala Harris that, I'm going to wipe out all the tariffs between U.S. and China, and we're going to get rid of those because I want to be best buddies with China. You're not going to hear that. Trump is going to take it a step further, but again, one of these issues
he'll always
that
one-up you on tariffs. Don't try to out-tariff Trump.
No, likely not changing in one direction or another based on who the next president is. Let's take a quick break. When we come back, I want to cover those Lowe's earnings, as well as some new rules for home buyers, what that's going to mean for you if you're in the market. That's next.
This is your home for the most comprehensive coverage of the economy and the trends on Wall Street. This is the Financial Exchange Radio Network.
This Veterans Day weekend, help honor all who have served this country. Join us on Saturday, November 9th for the 9th Annual Disabled American Veterans 5K Boston. It's a run and walk to support the DAV Department of Massachusetts. Saturday, November 9th at DCR's Castle Island in South Boston. Together, let's honor all who have sacrificed for our freedom. Register or donate now at dav5k.boston. That's dav5k.boston.
Protecting your assets is your most important financial responsibility, and irrevocable trusts can help you. Keep your assets safe from probate and the nursing home by calling Cushing & Dolan right now at 866-848-5699. Get their new guide called Unlocking the Power of Irrevocable Medicaid Trusts. That's 866-848-5699, or request it online by visiting LegalExchangeShow.com. The proceeding was paid for, and the views expressed are solely those of Cushing & Dolan. Cushing & Dolan and or Armstrong Advisory may contact you offering legal or investment services. Cushing & Dolan and Armstrong Advisory do not endorse each other and are not affiliated.
When you stop working, you stop earning a paycheck, and if you don't have a good sense of what your plans are in retirement, you may be faced with some financial challenges. Hi, this is Chuck Zada from the Armstrong Advisory Group. In order to retire comfortably without that financial strain, you can either reduce your expenses or find ways to replace your pre-retirement income so that you can determine the kind of retirement lifestyle you can afford. Our new guide this month is called A Day in the Life of a Retiree, and you can get it right now by calling 800-393-4001. In it, we'll walk you through several considerations you'll need to keep in mind as you develop your retirement plan. Get your copy of this brand new guide today by calling 800-393-4001. That's 800-393-4001.
The proceeding was paid for by Armstrong Advisory Group, a registered investment advisor. Nothing in the ad or in any Armstrong guide is specific financial, legal, or tax advice. Consult your own financial, tax, and estate planning advisors before making any investment decisions. Armstrong may contact you to offer investment advisory services. Protecting your assets is your most important financial responsibility, and creating a trust is a great way to help. Cushing & Dolan are experts in elder law. Their brand new guide out this month is called Unlocking the Power of Irrevocable Medicaid Trusts. There are many types of trusts to consider, but irrevocable trusts can establish the kinds of safeguards you'll need to protect your assets long term. Learn about how the trust can protect your assets from probate and potentially eliminate your estate taxes. If you're closing in on retirement and have an existing trust that needs a second look, or if you need a new trust to ensure that your assets are secured, call Cushing & Dolan right now at 866-848-5699 and let them help you create a plan that gives you confidence in your financial future. That number again is 866-848-5699, or request the guide online by visiting LegalExchangeShow.com. That's LegalExchangeShow.com. ArmstrongAdvisory.com. The proceeding was paid for and the views expressed are solely those of Gouging & Dolan. Gouging & Dolan and or Armstrong Advisory may contact you offering legal or investment services. Gouging & Dolan and Armstrong Advisory do not endorse each other and are not affiliated.
Are you retired like me and you just found out you owe the IRS a ton of money? Well, what would your life be like if they took your retirement savings away from you? They can do it, and your property. If you owe the IRS back taxes or you haven't filed in a while, the Tax Relief Line is here to help you. They can stop the IRS from taking your retirement savings. If you qualify, you could have your tax bill reduced to zero. That's right, if you're retired and you owe the IRS a lot in back taxes, you could have your entire tax bill reduced to zero due. The IRS has now hired thousands of new employees, so they're ready to come after you. Don't let them take your retirement savings or property. Make this free call now.
800-251-2153. 800-251-2153. 800-251-2153. That's 800-251-2153.
The Financial Exchange streams live on YouTube. Like our page and stay up to date on breaking business news all morning long. This is the Financial Exchange Radio Network.
This segment of the Financial Exchange is brought to you in part by the U.S. Virgin Islands Department of Tourism. The U.S. Virgin Islands are St. Croix, St. Thomas, and St. John. Enjoy perfect weather, world-class dining, incredible beaches, and a vibrant nightlife. Head to visitusvi.com and book your trip today. No passport is needed, and there's no money to exchange. Take your next vacation in America's Caribbean paradise, the United States Virgin Islands. Go to visitusvi.com to book your trip. That's visitusvi.com.
Mark and Tucker, we talked about this next story a lot back in the spring when the National Association of Realtors lost a big lawsuit in, I want to say Kansas City, but I could be wrong about where they lost the lawsuit. Nonetheless, the effects of that lawsuit are now being felt as of August 17th. There were changes to how MLS works in terms of being able to list out buyer's agent commissions on the listing website. So here's how I understand the changes. Typically, when you would go to MLS, it would show you, okay, this is the commission and this is the split between buyer and seller's agent when it comes to buying that home. Now the rules state that the commission itself can still exist if the seller wants to, but it cannot be advertised in the multiple listing service, the MLS, meaning if you are a buyer's agent and you are looking around at homes to bring your customer to look at new homes, you wouldn't necessarily know what the commission will be unless you had time to call up the listing agent, ask them about the listing, and ask whether or not there's going to be any compensation attached to it. I think the idea here is that, hey, there have been studies, for instance, that looked at the sale price adjusted for a bunch of stuff when you didn't have a buyer's agent commission versus when you did, and the thinking here is buyer's agents aren't bringing customers around to homes that don't offer it. And so if they don't know, then they'll bring them and have to negotiate it. Of course, in financial journalism, everybody's writing about how this is going to be the end of the world and there's going to be all sorts of confusion out there and millions of people are going to, probably not millions, but thousands of agents are going to quit the industry and not work in the industry anymore. And I genuinely, I don't know, but to me it seems really overdone. This is not so dramatic a change, in my view, that is going to completely upend the methods of doing business in the real estate industry. And it seems akin to me to something in the financial services industry that happened around 2016 when the Obama administration, I think, finalized the rules on their way out for the new fiduciary standard. And there were a bunch of insurance agents and a whole bunch of people attached to the industry that said, thousands of advisors are going to retire. How are they going to make a living? They're not going to be able to do this, et cetera, et cetera. And really was not that big of a change. The same exact products generally existed. There was a little bit more scrutiny and kind of life went on. So I'll be interested to see how this plays out. To me, the only thing that happens is more conversations about what realtors actually earn and how they earn it and what the compensation is going to be. Because there will be occasional conversations now, I suspect, where you're going to buy a home, there's no buyer's agent commission, and you're going to need to negotiate that with your agent in some way, shape, or form, probably up front.
You're going to be signing a form now if you engage an agent
right.
to, say, visit available homes.
Yeah, you're going to have a contract.
Presumably they have to, they have to explain. Somebody's got to explain that to you, right? What am I signing?
Which, again, seems like such a not big deal to me, right? Like, just explain to your customer how you make money.
It appears to be that innocuous. If you go to the NAR's website, they outline what this form has to contain, and it is exactly that, Mike. The objective here appears to be transparency, and as you point out, there's
It's a weird set of transparency because on one hand, you're removing transparency because now when you're looking at homes, you don't know whether or not there's a commission attached to it. But on the other hand, yeah, you have to have a contract with your customer.
Do I care beyond what I'm paying? I'm just not. I don't know what.
Do you care as the customer, you mean?
Yeah, as a customer. When I buy a car, I don't know what the salesman gets. I don't really care. I just want to know I got a good deal.
Right.
So I shop around. I'd probably approach buying a home, God forbid if I ever had to do it again, with the same mentality. I don't really care. I just want to get a reasonable markdown off of whatever the ask is, and I'll feel like I got a good deal. Having to sign something, that could be a little bit off-putting. That could just be theater. And by that I mean giving the appearance of transparency, and
I would feel a bit more comforted. Like an actual written contract that says, hey, this is what you're going to do for me, and this is what I'll pay you in exchange, rather than you'll get paid somehow behind the scenes, but who do you work for? Do you have an obligation to me, your customer?
But they still
those are nice things to have.
Does it create new obligations? You mentioned the fiduciary rule, and the term fiduciary generally means you're entrusting somebody to act in your best interest and to disclose any conflicts. It's not like realtors are going to be fiduciaries.
No.
How do you raise it if they don't disclose something? Are you injured by that? Do you take them to court? Do you call the NAR and tattle on them? What is the enforcement mechanism here? What are your rights if you feel like your realtor did wrong by you?
I think there are mechanisms in place today, and I don't think anything's changed that. Right, like if a realtor fails to disclose something to you that they know about the property, then I think you can take them to court if they knew about it and they should have told you that. Oh yeah, this basement's flooded 4 times and the selling agent told me and I didn't tell you. Yeah, I think you can take them to court just like you did before. So, the things that are going to change here, like I said, I think there will be more conversations. It will be a little bit trickier, perhaps. If you're a seller and you're looking at 5 different offers and 2 of them you have to pay out a buyer's agent commission and 3 of them you don't, then you're going to have to do some math. But to your point, Mark, I think what most people care about is, can I get the best price for my home? And I don't really see how this changes any of that. We'll see.
One of the provisions here is a term that prohibits the agent, I'm just reading from the NAR's website, from receiving compensation for brokerage services from any source that exceeds the amount or rate agreed to with the buyer. And I'm going to put myself in the column of I don't care as long as I think I got a good price. I don't care if they get a kickback.
I care as a seller.
Yeah, I'm reading buyers, implications for buyers here.
Yeah.
Seller, different because it presumably comes out of my
right.
proceeds.
And that's where I think the more interesting conversations are going to happen. It's going to be, okay, this was the standard across the board. I had to pay a 6% commission or a 5% commission or a 5.5% commission no matter what. And it was really pretty uniform. And to my knowledge, I think the National Association of Realtors actually required their members to require their customers to do that. I don't think you could be part of the NAR and say, no, we don't offer buyer's agent commissions. And that's changing now. And so that's the piece that I will find interesting is when you are working as a seller with an agent, what did they discuss with you in terms of the commission structure that's going to exist going forward? Because that's the more honest part. That's to me the more interesting part. On the buyer's agent, I think it's going to be a little bit messy, but you kind of figure it out. Like, okay, if I'm going to represent you, this is how much money I expect to make. And if you buy a home that's not offering a commission, then I'm going to get paid somewhere else. Figure it out. I don't know.
The overall spirit here seems good. There will be more information provided, particularly, Mike, to sellers, because you want to know who's getting a cut of your equity.
I would imagine there are realtors listening. Please tell me how I'm wrong. I'm sure I'm wrong about this in some meaningful way, But to me, it just looks like, hey, you avoided having a conversation for years, and now you have to have it, and that's uncomfortable, which I understand, but doesn't.
Did they avoid it, or was it just unnecessary complexity? I doubt they were hiding anything.
I don't think they were hiding anything, but I don't think I was never discussed. It was never discussed with me.
No,
Let me put it that way.
Again,
Quick break, but a lot more to cover in the second hour of the Financial Exchange. Markets broadly down with the NASDAQ leading the way off 0.4%. We'll be right back on the Financial Exchange.
Despite overwhelming support from Democrats and Republicans, time is running out for Congress to pass the AM Radio for Every Vehicle Act, which will keep AM radio in cars. Text AM to 52886 and ask Congress to bring this bill to a vote now. AM radio is too important to let this moment pass us by.
Message and data rates may apply. You may receive up to 4 messages a month, and you may text STOP to STOP.
This message furnished by the National Association of Broadcasters.
Summer in New England is spectacular. Winter in the U.S. Virgin Islands is even better. St. Croix, St. Thomas, and St. John are 3 of the most incredible islands anywhere in the Caribbean, and their popularity has soared over the past 3 years. If you're ready for your next fabulous vacation, now's the time to check out the American Caribbean. Go to visitusvi.com, where you'll find all the information you need to book a trip that you'll never forget. The St. Croix Crucian Festival runs from December 26th to January 4th. Celebrate New Year's on St. Croix and enjoy world-class cuisine, pristine beaches, a wide variety of water sports, and some of the greatest musical acts the islands have to offer. Travel to and from New England is simple, and your stay will be hassle-free, because this is the American Caribbean. There's no passport needed and no money to exchange. America's Caribbean paradise is waiting for you. Go to visitusvi.com and make your plans today. That's visitusvi.com.
Sometimes we know what's next. Other times, it's impossible to know. Life can change in an instant. Don't be caught standing by the next time someone's heart stops. Knowing CPR gives you the ability to act and takes you from bystander to lifesaver. CPR is a life-saving skill. Join the nation of lifesavers today by learning CPR at heart.org/nation. National support for CPR education provided by Elevance Health Foundation.
Hey, listen, are you a 50-year-old person looking for term life insurance? Then you need to talk to Bob. Bob specializes in helping people find $1 million or more of term life insurance for a couple of $100 a month. Look, you need to know there's a price war in the term life insurance business, and you may be paying too much. Call Bob, and he'll shop and see how much money he can save you. Look, this could be the last term life insurance policy you ever have. Your rates are guaranteed for the next 20 years. That's right, guaranteed level rates for the next 20 years. And if you're a smoker or your health is not perfect, Bob has great rates for you too. So for $1 million of term life insurance coverage for a couple of $100 a month, call Bob right now. 800-965-7987. 800-965-7987. 800-965-7987. That's 800-965-7987. Paid for by Term Direct.
This is the Money Matters Radio Network. WBNW 1120 AM and W275 CM FM. Concord, Boston. The Money Matters Radio Network.
This is Tucker Silva with the Financial Exchange Show, and I'm joined today by estate planning attorney Todd Lutzke from the law firm of Cushing & Dolan with your Financial Exchange quick tip of the day. And today, we're talking about how Medicaid irrevocable trusts operate. Now, Todd, it takes 5 years to protect your assets from the cost of long-term care. If you aren't sure you or your spouse will make the 5 years before going into a nursing home, should you even bother to do your estate planning?
The answer is absolutely yes, you should bother. And here's why, folks. There's people who maybe don't even start their planning until they're 80. It doesn't mean just because you're 80, you don't try, you don't plan, right? 85, you plan. You don't know whether you're going to get sick or not get sick. But by the same token, when you're 65 and you're doing your planning, you also might not make it past the 5 years. So just because you might not make it past the 5 years is not a reason to get this clock started. For example, lots of times when we put assets in the trust, we leave lots of assets outside the trust, especially IRA assets. So let's say you made it 3 years,
but you had $200,000 in an IRA outside the trust. If I got $1 million worth of assets in the trust, I'm happy to spend $200,000 of my IRA to get past the remaining 2 years to get me protected from the nursing home with the $1 million that went in there. So getting the clock started is always better than not having the clock started.
Gouging and Dolan have been helping families like yours for more than 30 years, and find out if they can help yours too. Request this brand new guide called Unlocking the Power of Medicaid Irrevocable Trust. Call 866-848-5699. That's 866-848-5699, or you can request it from their website, legalexchangeshow.com.
The proceeding was paid for, and the views expressed are solely those of Gouging and Dolan. Gouging and Dolan and or Armstrong Advisory may contact you offering legal or investment services. Gouging and Armstrong do not endorse each other and are not affiliated.
Discover the fish and farm market at the Boston Fish Pier. Open every Saturday from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. in Boston Seaport. From fresh seafood to juicy tomatoes and sweet corn to grab-and-go options, indulge in the peak of summer's bounty. Support local farmers and enjoy the freshest ingredients all summer long. Sponsored by Mass Farmers Markets, a nonprofit dedicated to championing farmers markets across Massachusetts. Find a market near you at massfarmersmarkets.org.
If you're getting close to retirement, you've likely thought about how you'll spend all of your free time. Hi, this is Mike Armstrong from the Armstrong Advisory Group, and with no more 40-hour work weeks or hour-long commutes on your agenda, you might find yourself on the links in Florida or traveling the world with your spouse and family. The financial pieces of the retirement puzzle are important. Having a specific plan about how you want to live day to day in your post-professional life is just as important, and our new guide called A Day in the Life of a Retiree may help. You can get it today by calling 800-393-4001. In the guide, we're going to discuss how to connect your financial needs in retirement to where and how you'll be living. Call us again at 800-393-4001 and get your free copy today. That number again, 800-393-4001.
The proceeding was paid for by Armstrong Advisory Group, a registered investment advisor. Nothing in the ad or in any Armstrong guide is specific financial, legal, or tax advice. Consult your own financial, tax, and estate planning advisors before making any investment decisions. Armstrong may contact you to offer investment advisory services.
Hi, I'm Lisa Hughes. This Veterans Day weekend, help honor all who've served our country and join WBZ for the annual DAV 5K, a run or walk to support disabled vets here in Massachusetts with housing, transportation, and other critical support. Saturday, November 9th at DCR's Castle Island in South Boston. Let's thank all who have sacrificed for our freedom and help our heroes on their road to recovery. Visit DAV5K.Boston to register or donate today.
The DAV 5K Boston is presented by Veterans Development Corporation.
Protecting your assets is your most important financial responsibility, and irrevocable trusts can help you. Keep your assets safe from probate and the nursing home by calling Gouging and Dolan right now at 866-848-5699. Get their new guide called Unlocking the Power of Irrevocable Medicaid Trusts. That's 866-848-5699, or request it online by visiting legalexchangeshow.com. The proceeding was paid for, and the views expressed are solely those of Gouging and Dolan. Gouging and Dolan and or Armstrong Advisory may contact you offering legal or investment services. Gouging and Dolan and Armstrong Advisory do not endorse each other and are not affiliated.
For 40 years, Cancer Support Community has been a relentless ally for anyone impacted by cancer, with free services provided online and in person, with their newest location in Massachusetts. Connect with Cancer Support Community Massachusetts for free emotional support, educational resources, patient navigation, financial counseling, and more. 617-797-3391. CancerSupportMass.org, CancerSupportMass.org.
The Financial Exchange is produced by Money Matters Radio and is hosted by employees of the Armstrong Advisory Group, a registered investment advisor. All opinions expressed are solely those of the hosts, do not reflect the opinions of Armstrong Advisory or anyone else. Investments can lose money. This program does not offer any specific financial or investment advice. Please consult your own financial, tax, and estate planning advisors before making any investment decisions. Armstrong Advisory and the advertisers heard on this program do not endorse each other or their services. Armstrong and Money Matters Radio do not compensate each other for referrals and are not affiliated. This is the Financial Exchange with Mike Armstrong and Marc Fandetti. Your exclusive look at business and financial news affecting your day, your city, your world. Stay informed and up to date about economic and market trends, plus breaking business news every day. The Financial Exchange is a proud partner of the Disabled American Veterans Department of Massachusetts. Help us support our great American heroes by visiting DAV5K.Boston and making a donation today. The DAV 5K Boston is presented by Veterans Development Corporation. This is the Financial Exchange with Mike Armstrong and Marc Fandetti.
Welcome back to the Financial Exchange. We're continuing our week of Fed talk as the Federal Reserve and other central bankers gather in Jackson Hole, Wyoming for their annual symposium. We've got earnings from Lowe's as well as other retailers coming out all this week, and then just a fantastic news story about bad financial decisions on behalf of American households. But let's start off with the Fed, Marc. They're meeting in Jackson Hole. The focus at this meeting isn't or shouldn't be exactly what the Fed is going to do next in their own policy when it comes to this economy right now, but rather larger picture questions. But an opinion piece from Market Watch today on the big problem with this Federal Reserve is getting out of its own way on the path to lower inflation. What's the point that's being made here, and how has the Fed been getting in its own way? If you would agree with this piece, or maybe
the author here, who teaches undergraduates at BC, makes a lot of good points. Economic growth has been good. The statistics that we look at, though they don't reflect everybody's lived experience,
sure.
GDP, inflation, unemployment, the first two of those moving in decent directions. GDP, a little wobbly lately, but generally still strong, above most researchers' estimates of trend. Inflation has come down, still a bit elevated, but most people think it's on the right trajectory. I have my doubts, but we'll put those aside for now. Unemployment is the crux of this piece, really. It's been going up.
Yeah.
And the author's point is that because he doesn't say it like this, but I will, because things the Fed does take place with a lag. You lower interest rates today, it's a while before that works its way through the economy. In recognition of rising unemployment and other measures suggesting an increase of so-called slack in the labor market, workers have less leverage than they used to. And we've been touching on stories like that all morning, really, and you and Chuck have over the past couple months as well. In light of that, Fed's got to act today. The more inflation expectations, the author makes this point too, it's a good one, I guess, the more inflation expectations come down, the more real interest rates go up. Just take that at face value. Trust me on that one for the moment. You don't want interest rates, real interest rates, which are what matter for decision makers. We don't want them going up, making for even tighter monetary policy. The Fed doesn't have to do anything. Policy gets tighter if expectations come down and their target for Fed funds stays where it is. So for all those reasons, this author wants more aggressive lowering of interest rates, as do many. I'll call them left of center economists, because I really do think it comes down to ideology. People who are
willing
more
to ignore
conservative
the 1970s.
economically, like me. I favor stomping out inflation and would tolerate a little bit more unemployment as long as it's not my job. Others,
I would tolerate other people losing their jobs.
Yeah, I'm sorry. You have to take one for the team, son. But others, more left of center, they tend to put more emphasis on the unemployment part of the Fed's so-called dual mandate. And these two podes, is that the right word? Is that these two parts of these ends of the spectrum? And I'll come back to that, Mike. We can talk about that off air. These two parts of the spectrum on the dual mandate, they are in perfect tension: unemployment and inflation. There is, in the short term anyway, a critical distinction. There is a short-term trade-off between the two, and the Fed's always trying to strike the right balance.
My takeaway on this would be, I believe it would be a mistake for the Fed to insist on still high interest rates in exchange for getting to 2% inflation. I think 2% flat is kind of arbitrary, and so long as you're in the right range or trending in that direction, I think it's reasonable to lower interest rates. My point would be, the Fed seems to agree with that. The Fed's made that point of, we're on our way to 2%. We think 2% is still a reasonable target, but we can start cutting rates before we get there. And that's the only thing that I would think would be a mistake, is if you ignored that. If you said, no, we're not going to touch interest rates until we actually hit 2%, regardless of what's going on with unemployment. that would be silly, but that's what the Fed's doing. So I don't think they've been in their way on the way down. I think they might have been in their own way on the way up. I think you and I agree that they were way too slow to act on the face of rising inflation. But I don't really think they've been in their own way on the way down. I disagree with the way they've talked about things. I disagree with the way that they have described the economic situation. I think they kind of waved the mission accomplished banner at the end of last year preemptively. But in terms of their actual actions, they haven't touched interest rates yet. I don't think it was justified to do so. They're talking about doing so in September. And to me, that looks fairly reasonable. So we'll see.
Yeah, we don't know.
Like I said, we might disagree on whether that's reasonable. And if they go with a 50 basis point rate cut with new economic data that comes out that shows, stronger than expected inflation, then I would disagree with that. But so far, last 12 months, frankly, 18 months to 2 years, I haven't seen the Fed getting in its own way. I've just disagreed with some of the things they've said. And actions speak louder than words, in my view.
Look, we just don't know. Inflation came down from about 9% a little over 2 years ago to roughly 3%. I'm using year over year, so last 12 months, which is not the best measure, but just roll with it. So from 9 to 3 with very little increase in unemployment. That's not just rare, it's extraordinary. So the question is, did it come down because of supply chain normalization and energy price reductions? I know a lot of you are saying, what do you mean energy price price reductions? Gas is still expensive. It is, but energy prices are way off their high. So is it due to that, or is it due to the typical drag on inflation, which is slowing economic growth? We don't really know the answer to that question.
Won't know for a few years.
Which is why they've been cautious.
Lowe's reported earnings this morning. Basically the exact same story that we got out of Home Depot here is my general conclusion. The actual shares of Lowe's are down about 1.7% in early trading so far. Earnings for the current quarter came in better than expected, $410 versus $397 expected, but revenue is off a bit, and really their focus from their executive team during the earnings call was, hey, things have been all right, but we expect second half sales to be pretty weak in the face of this real estate market right now, which is pretty much exactly what we heard from Home Depot. And the answer it seems to line up with everything that I am seeing within this real estate market, which is frozen in a lot of ways, right? You just have this real estate market where there is certainly still a number of buyers, but they are not seeing the prices or inventory that they want, and sellers aren't interested in returning to the market until rates are lower. And so I'm not surprised to hear this from Lowe's and Home Depot. We'll see where things also come in. There is a story here too about companies wanting to lower expectations for their own businesses so that they can hopefully beat on those lowered expectations. But yeah, both Home Depot and Lowe's basically concluding the same thing about the real estate market, which is people aren't buying new homes. There's less construction going on, and there's fewer big projects going on because people aren't moving and they don't want to improve upon a home that they eventually want to sell.
Yeah, is it bad news for the economy generally? I don't know. Will people just spend the money elsewhere? I'd wait for more evidence on overall spending, which thankfully we get once a month from the federal government.
Yeah, I don't think it's terrible news for the economy, but I can't look at this and say it's good news for the economy.
No, I don't.
Right? Like, there's nothing in here that says, oh, yeah, this is, thank God Lowe's earnings were terrible, or not that great, or their projections were terrible, because that's going to mean great news for the economy. Like, maybe that spending appears elsewhere. Maybe it just gets saved for that eventual home purchase, and that's what's going to be the net impact on the economy. Does this money actually just get spent on a Disney vacation instead, or do the person put it in their savings account and be responsible and hold on to it for when they can buy that next home? Because let's be honest, Disney spending is discretionary, but when you buy a new home, there's a lot of, if they're not requirements, they're darn near necessities when it comes to move. Yeah, actually, there are a whole bunch of money that gets spent in the economy that is a necessity of moving. You have to hire movers in a lot of cases. You have to paint or redecorate or just move stuff around, and in and of itself, that creates economic gains, the spending.
Yeah,
it creates spending.
Activity.
It creates activity. So I don't think you conclude that this is terrible news for the economy, but it's certainly not good news, and we will see where the real estate market goes over the next 6 months.
Somebody pointed out, I forget whether it was somebody editorializing, the writer editorializing, or quoting someone from their recent earnings news release and press conference, if they had one yet, or analyst conference, mentioned that, consumers might be holding off until the Fed cuts rates. that could be true, but the more you say that, the more economic slowdown or even recession becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you tell people rates are coming down, so hold off on any big ticket purchases until they do, you'll
have a recession.
You're going to beget the recession that the Fed was supposed to be responding to in the first place. This type of feedback
you also
is
get that lower inflation.
Unavoidable. Yeah. Congratulations. You want lower gas prices? You want lower food prices?
Give me 10% unemployment. That'll get you
One
there.
way to do it is, that's what the Fed has traditionally done to lower inflation. You got to slow economic activity, right?
Let's take a quick break. When we come back, some trivia here next on the Financial Exchange.
Tune in for Trivia, brought to you by Applebee's. Every day at 11:20 for your chance to win cool prizes. Text us at 617-362-1385 and use keyword Applebee's. Complete rules are available at financialexchangeshow.com. This is the Financial Exchange Radio Network.
When you stop working, you stop earning a paycheck, and if you don't have a good sense of what your plans are in retirement, you may be faced with some financial challenges. Hi, this is Chuck Zada from the Armstrong Advisory Group. In order to retire comfortably without that financial strain, you can either reduce your expenses or find ways to replace your pre-retirement income so that you can determine the kind of retirement lifestyle you can afford. Our new guide this month is called A Day in the Life of a Retiree, and you can get it right now by calling 800-393-4001. In it, we'll walk you through several considerations you'll need to keep in mind as you develop your retirement plan. Get your copy of this brand new guide today by calling 800-393-4001. That's 800-393-4001.
The proceeding was paid for by Armstrong Advisory Group, a registered investment advisor. Nothing in the ad or in any Armstrong guide is specific financial, legal, or tax advice. Consult your own financial, tax, and estate planning advisors before making any investment decisions. Armstrong may contact you to offer investment advisory services. Elder life planning can be overwhelming, so make sure you're prepared, or you could make costly mistakes that affect your overall plan. Irrevocable trusts are the most common type of trust that folks use for financial protection, and while they can be complicated to create, they help keep your assets safe because they contain specific protections that many of us need, like the possibility of eliminating your estate taxes. Cushing & Dolan are experts in elder law and taxation, and they can devise a plan that covers you in every area where issues can arise. Their new guide is called Unlocking the Power of Irrevocable Medicaid Trusts. Learn more about how these trusts can benefit your family by calling 866-848-5699 right now. That's 866-848-5699. Or you can request the guide right now by visiting LegalExchangeShow.com. The proceeding was paid for and the views expressed are solely those of Cushing & Dolan. Cushing & Dolan and or Armstrong Advisory may contact you offering legal or investment services. Cushing & Dolan and Armstrong Advisory do not endorse each other and are not affiliated. Summer in New England is spectacular. Winter in the U.S. Virgin Islands is even better. St. Croix, St. Thomas, and St. John are three of the most incredible islands anywhere in the Caribbean, and their popularity has soared over the past 3 years. If you're ready for your next fabulous vacation, now's the time to check out the American Caribbean. Go to visitusvi.com, where you'll find all the information you need to book a trip that you'll never forget. The St. Croix Crucian Festival runs from December 26th to January 4th. Celebrate New Year's on St. Croix and enjoy world-class cuisine, pristine beaches, a wide variety of water sports, and some of the greatest musical acts the islands have to offer. Travel to and from New England is simple, and your stay will be hassle-free because this is the American Caribbean. There's no passport needed and no money to exchange. America's Caribbean paradise is waiting for you. Go to visitusvi.com and make your plans today. That's visitusvi.com.
Despite overwhelming support from Democrats and Republicans, time is running out for Congress to pass the AM Radio for Every Vehicle Act, which will keep AM radio in cars. Text AM to 52886 and ask Congress to bring this bill to a vote now. AM radio is too important to let this moment pass us by.
Message and data rates may apply. You may receive up to 4 messages a month, and you may text STOP to stop.
This message furnished by the National Association of Broadcasters.
It happens all over Massachusetts.
Can you tie my shoes?
In every home and every community.
Be careful on your bike.
Learning can happen anytime, anywhere.
Hi, guys.
We'll see you at practice this weekend.
And no matter how learning takes place in your family's life, DESE is there as your partner. The Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. Never stop learning. Find out more at mass.gov/back-to-school.
Sponsored by the Massachusetts Department for Elementary and Secondary Education.
The Financial Exchange streams live on YouTube. Like our page and stay up to date on breaking business news all morning long. This is the Financial Exchange Radio Network.
Time for trivia here on the Financial Exchange, and it's brought to you by Applebee's. Take your friends or family to any area Applebee's and enjoy half-price late-night appetizers after 9 p.m., including boneless wings, spinach and artichoke dip, and warm pretzels dipped in beer cheese. And don't forget to join Club Applebee's to enjoy exclusive deals and specials. You'll get a free appetizer just for signing up. Now, that's eating good in the neighborhood, Boyd. We're prohibited dine-in only. Continuing our 80s theme trivia questions here on the show. The Cold War lasted from 1947 to 1991, but the beginning of the end happened when the Berlin Wall fell. On November 9th, 1989, Germany began the process of unification and the Berlin Wall started being demolished. 1 month later, an American singer/actor performed a concert at the wall to a crowd of over 500,000 people. Trivia question today. Which artist performed his hit song Looking for Freedom at the Berlin Wall in 1989? Once again, which artist performed his hit song Looking for Freedom at the Berlin Wall in 1989? Be the first person today to text us at 617-362-1385 with the correct answer. You can win a Financial Exchange Show t-shirt and be registered to win a $100 gift card to Applebee's. Be sure to include the keyword Applebee's in your text, and we'll give away that Applebee's gift card on Friday's show. 617-362-1385, and the first correct response will be our winner. See complete contest rules at financialexchangeshow.com.
Good news, guys. I think I found a American habit that's dumber than our car buying habit. I've talked at length about how I think our car buying habits in the United States are just horribly financially irresponsible. We keep borrowing money for longer and longer and then rolling bad loans into new cars that we can't afford. I think it's just kind of stupidity incarnate. But I found one that's worse, which is a survey that was done recently by LendingTree, finding that of the 2,000 people whom they surveyed, 45% of those, there was a survey of parents with children under the age of 18 who have gone to Disney, went into debt to fund their trip. 45% of those 2,000 families that they spoke to went into debt to go on a vacation. I mean, at least the $90,000 F-Series pickup truck that you buy can be sold later on for like $60,000 if you lose your job and can't afford it anymore. But if you buy a Disney vacation on that credit card and then lose your job, that is just a week-long depreciation.
Why is buying an experience with debt worse than buying a durable good with debt? If it depends on how you value it. I had the same
Can't resell a Disney vacation.
I had the same reaction you did.
Can't resell a Disney vacation.
But aren't those just our preferences being imposed on other people's decisions? They may value the memory. I'm not saying it's a good idea, Mike. I had the same exact reaction you did. It made me a little queasy. But at the same time, then I had to stop and think, well, maybe I'm just very materialistic. I would never go into debt to buy something I didn't consider to be an asset, an investment of some kind. But what if somebody considers that to be an investment in strengthening their family bond or something?
Yeah,
I know it's a little bit of a stretch, but do you think that's what they're thinking, or are they just not making good decisions?
I think they're mainly just
funny.
not making good decisions. I recognize that, people are Disney fanatics, and it is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and I will just throw a little bit of judgment at the family who justified this to bring their 1.5-year-old to Disney.
Too young, yeah.
Well, one, you're going into hundreds of dollars of debt. No, sorry, you're going into thousands of dollars of debt to take an 18-month-old to Disney, and guess what? You ain't making memories, all right? So, this is for you. Don't play it as some vacation for your kid, because that kid ain't making any memories right now. They're just going to see the picture later on. I don't know. Is it fundamentally different and dumber than buying a car that you can't afford? I think so, because at least if you get into hot water, you can sell the car for something, whereas this isn't as substantial. But you probably spend more on the car. So maybe they're just equally dumb financial decisions.
Texter said, I understand what Mike is saying, but you also have to enjoy life because you only get one. I'm kind of in that camp.
True. I guess. I would just generally say, buying things on credit that you can't actually afford is just a long-term bad financial decision, in my view.
Elder life planning can be overwhelming, so make sure you're prepared or you could make costly mistakes that affect your overall plan. Irrevocable trusts are the most common type of trust that folks use for financial protection, and while they can be complicated to create, they help keep your assets safe because they contain specific protections that many of us need, like the possibility of eliminating your estate taxes. Gouging & Dolan are experts in elder law and taxation, and they can devise a plan that covers you in every area where issues can arise. Their new guide is called Unlocking the Power of Irrevocable Medicaid Trusts. Learn more about how these trusts can benefit your family by calling 866-848-5699. That's 866-848-5699, or you can request it from their website, legalexchangeshow.com.
The proceeding was paid for, and the views expressed are solely those of Gouging & Dolan. Gouging & Dolan and/or Armstrong Advisory may contact you offering legal or investment services. Gouging and Armstrong do not endorse each other and are not affiliated.
Even worse kind of personal finance story is our scam of the week here from Bloomberg. Financial frauds exploding across the country. Everyone now is familiar with these. This one from Bloomberg is a bit of an analysis of an 83-year-old from the Hudson River Valley who was scammed out of more than $1 million. Tricked her into handing scammers $1.4 million. Her nest egg is now completely gone. Pretty common one scam here that you have probably heard about before, where somebody posing as a security admin from her bank, JP Morgan, convinced her that her account had already been compromised and she needed to start funneling this money from all over the place. Not only did they empty her bank account, run up her credit cards, they also convinced her to empty out a Vanguard investment account, transfer the money to JP Morgan where the money disappeared. I have two things. One, JP Morgan never contacted authorities when they suspected that there was a fraud going on here, nor did Bank of America, according to some internal documents that Bloomberg obtained. So that's a real problem. Banks and any financial institution that detects or suspects some sort of fraud needs to have a way to contact authorities and deal with that problem in this way, because this woman's life is now ruined in her late 80s when she has no way of making this money back. My other conclusion on this is that if you want to be able to prevent this type of thing, you have to take a step back, and I myself have done this. I am not savvy enough to guarantee that I won't fall for this next scam. That's what everybody has to do, is just admit for a second that these are really, really tricky, that anybody can fall victim to them. And if you just take the approach of I would never do that, then you're probably going to be the next victim of the next big scam, because it's not going to look like this one, the one that you fall for. And so that's been my conclusion, is nobody is too savvy to not fall for these types of things, and be prepared. Quick break, but a lot more to cover, including the battle for budget bookings on airlines. We'll cover that next on the Financial Exchange.
Bringing the latest financial news straight to your radio every day. It's the Financial Exchange on the Financial Exchange Radio Network.
For 40 years, Cancer Support Community has been a relentless ally for anyone impacted by cancer, with free services provided online and in person, with their newest location in Massachusetts. Connect with Cancer Support Community Massachusetts for free emotional support, educational resources, patient navigation, financial counseling, and more. 617-797-3391. CancerSupportMass.org. CancerSupportMass.org.
We are the Debt Destroyer Network. Any debt you have, credit card, tax, student loan debt, call now for free information that helps you destroy your debt. It's great advice. Plus, when you make this free call now, we have Debt Destroyer experts ready to help. They can show you how to destroy your debt and get your life back on track. Debt problems don't have to be overwhelming. You can live stress-free and debt-free. Credit cards, medical bills, IRS tax problems, even student loan debt. Learn about free programs offered by the credit card companies, hospitals, and even the government that can help slash your debt. Call the Debt Destroyer now for free information. Call now. 800-430-8804. 800-430-8804. 800-430-8804. Again, that's 800-430-8804.
Discover the Fish and Farm Market at the Boston Fish Pier. Open every Saturday from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. in Boston Seaport. From fresh seafood to juicy tomatoes and sweet corn to grab-and-go options, indulge in the peak of summer's bounty. Support local farmers and enjoy the freshest ingredients all summer long. Sponsored by Mass Farmers Markets, a nonprofit dedicated to championing farmers markets across Massachusetts. Find a market near you at massfarmersmarkets.org.
Are you looking to volunteer for an amazing nonprofit organization that helps our veterans? The DAV Department of Massachusetts Transportation Network needs volunteers right now. This network provides free transportation to and from any VA medical appointment for veterans of all eras. To become a volunteer driver, you do not need to be a veteran or a DAV member. You just need to have the willingness to help our veterans and have a valid driver's license. Sign up now at davma.org. That's davma.org.
Protecting your assets is your most important financial responsibility, and irrevocable trusts can help you. Keep your assets safe from probate and the nursing home by calling Cushing & Dolan right now at 866-848-5699. Get their new guide called Unlocking the Power of Irrevocable Medicaid Trusts. That's 866-848-5699, or request it online by visiting LegalExchangeShow.com. The proceeding was paid for, and the views expressed are solely those of Cushing & Dolan. Cushing & Dolan and or Armstrong Advisory may contact you offering legal or investment services. Cushing & Dolan and Armstrong Advisory do not endorse each other and are not affiliated.
Hi, this is Chuck and Mike from the Armstrong Advisory Group, and we've got a guide out this month titled A Day in the Life of a Retiree. The big focus of this guide is about figuring out what you actually want to do with your time in retirement, not just the financial piece, but how are you going to spend your days? How does someone go about figuring that out, Mike, or starting to figure it out?
Yeah, Chuck, I love this piece because it is a lot different than our normal course of what we put together from the Armstrong Advisory Group. And what I tell people frequently, one, I'm not going to tell you how to spend your retirement. I have no idea. But the most successful retirees, and by successful, I mean the most content in retirement, who are not stressed about money, are those who have really thought through a coherent plan of not just what I don't want to do in retirement, i.e. work, but what I want to accomplish and do when I'm done working.
It seems to me that it really has to be something where you say, I'm retiring to do this, not retiring from doing that more than anything else.
And often that's the focus because, look, for a lot of us, work is extremely stressful. We've been supporting families for decades, and the allure of not having to do that, not having to pull in that paycheck anymore is really tempting. But I'm here to say that I've looked at a lot of this from a lot of different people in all sorts of different industries, and the most successful ones are the ones that are retiring because they're passionate about something that they want to do that they finally have time for.
Our guide is titled A Day in the Life of a Retiree, and you can request it by calling 800-393-4001. Again, the guide is A Day in the Life of a Retiree, and you can request it by calling 800-393-4001.
The proceeding was paid for by Armstrong Advisory Group, a registered investment advisor. Nothing in the ad or in any Armstrong guide is specific financial, legal, or tax advice. Consult your own financial, tax, and estate planning advisors before making any investment decisions. Armstrong may contact you to offer investment advisory services. Missed one of our shows? Catch up anytime by asking your Alexa smart speaker to play The Financial Exchange. This is the Financial Exchange Radio Network.
Trivia question today was, which artist performed his hit song Looking for Freedom at the Berlin Wall back in 1989? That would be David Hasselhoff. December 31st, 1989, American TV actor and pop music singer David Hasselhoff was the headlining performer for the Freedom Tour live concert, which was attended by over 500,000 people on both sides of the wall. Winner today of the Financial Exchange Show t-shirt was Suzanne from Sandwich, Mass. And Suzanne's also registered to win a $100 gift card to Applebee's, which will give away on Friday. And trivia is brought to you by Applebee's. Enjoy half-price late-night appetizers after 9 p.m. and join Club Applebee's to enjoy exclusive deals and specials. You'll get a free appetizer just for signing up. Now, that's eating good in the neighborhood, void where prohibited, dine-in only.
Well, now that the JetBlue Spirit Airlines merger is dead, these airlines are, specifically on the budget side, are trying to figure out how they make themselves stand out. Spirit Airlines and Frontier both bundling amenities such as alcohol, Wi-Fi, bigger seats as they, I think, prepare for turbulence. And this article, to me, points out the biggest drawback you have when you're going with a Spirit or Frontier. Like, I don't think a Spirit flight is that more likely to get canceled than, say, a Delta flight. The difference is if your Spirit flight does get canceled, you're not flying out for another week and a half because there's just one flight a day from all these major places. And whereas if you're on Delta, you can rebook to another place. And so I don't know how. It's kind of an airline catch-22. Like, it's not great experience if you're small, but when you're giant like JetBlue or Delta or American, it's pretty tough to keep offering the really cheap airline seat. It's just tough to get to that scale on that premise. And so I think that kind of explains why all these airlines look more and more alike to me. Do you ever fly? I mean, Mark, would you ever? I have.
Used to for work a lot.
Well, if it was on somebody else's dime, I certainly wouldn't be flying.
Sure. No problem. Flight gets canceled. Just hop to another airline and it's expensed.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's mildly inconvenient, but you don't have that sinking feeling in your stomach like, oh, God, I'm not going to get home for 2 days.
I would also assume if flying for business, you would never consider flying on Spirit or Frontier.
No, you would. I mean,
really?
Cost is, if you're billing the client, it's an issue. Absolutely. They'd want to know why you needed to fly the least economical option every time. First class is absolutely out of the question unless you get upgraded. So, no, you're expected. I suppose it depends on the client, but yeah, in my experience, you are accountable for you're accountable for exercising good judgment when it comes to expenses, Mike.
Yeah.
So the issue here is they're not big enough. You know, an industry this big, this capital intensive, you need scale, as you pointed out. To get your average costs down, you need a very big operation. Yeah. This is why the industry is so tumultuous.
And to be considered reliable and a good place to be, you need to have multiple flights a day from those locations so that if your flight does get canceled, you can rebook somebody on a later afternoon flight or deal with that type of thing. And that's the disadvantage that some of these smaller airlines seem to have, in my point. It's a bit of a catch-22 there. If you want to be able to be reliable and looked at for business travel and things along those lines, I know you're saying that you would consider Spirit. I would have a tougher time doing so because of the reliability.
Depends on the destination, obviously.
Then you have to be bigger. And to be bigger, it's tougher to offer the same offering that you have when you're Frontier or Spirit at a reasonable or really cheap cost. Folks, I want to talk to you about the brand new guide for the month of August from the Armstrong Advisor Group. It's a little bit new and different than our typical guide. You'll often see, information on taxes or on required distributions and stuff that we put together. And we really tried to take a different approach this month with our guide on a day in the life of a retiree. And we put it together, well, for a number of reasons, but really one in particular, which is frequently we come across folks who retire for one reason and really one reason only, which is they don't want to be working in their current job anymore. And I think all of us can relate to that. I think if you haven't in the American workforce worked a job that you didn't love, then you haven't really had the American workforce experience, because everybody's had a job that they don't love and that is difficult to go into. But the problem that we see when that happens is people will retire or quit that job because they don't want to do it anymore, but they haven't actually given the time to put into what will life look like if I'm not reporting to work every day? What are my passions? What am I actually going to explore? How am I going to live if I don't have that 9 to 5 or that more like 8 to 6 these days every day to fill my day? And I think we've all imagined this sort of thing, but we lay out this guide to give a sense for, hey, these are the conversations you might consider having with your spouse or with your family if you're heading towards retirement. Obviously, there's pieces in here about the financial impact too, right? What's the impact of taking Social Security early? How much will I spend down in savings? What order do I access my different investments? But if you are finding yourself in that position of, I want to retire, but it's mainly because I don't want to be working anymore. Maybe it's a dangerous job. Maybe it's just an exhausting job. I'm traveling everywhere and I can't do it anymore. I would really encourage you to sit down, grab a copy of this guide, read through it, and think about those lifestyle decisions that you're facing. Am I going to be moving in retirement? Am I going to be sticking around? Where am I going to get my health insurance? How much is it going to cost me? What do I want to accomplish? once I don't have the drag of that job looming overhead. Give our office a call at 800-393-4001. That's the number for the Armstrong Advisory Group, and we'll hook you up with a free copy of our brand new guide for the month of August called A Day in the Life of a Retiree. One more time, that phone number is 800-393-4001.
The proceeding was paid for by Armstrong Advisory Group, a registered investment advisor. Nothing in the ad or in any Armstrong guide is specific financial, legal, or tax advice. Consult your own financial, tax, and estate planning advisors before making any investment decisions. Armstrong may contact you to offer investment advisory services.
Mark, the last time I looked, the stocks of Walgreens and CVS had not had a great recent run over the last decade or so. I haven't looked at it all that closely, but their businesses have been struggling for a little while for a number of different reasons. One would be their front-of-the-house retail business, as you would imagine, has taken a hit from the likes of Amazon and other discount retailers. In fact, I have to say, the only time that I go into a CVS, unless I'm getting a prescription, but like if I'm buying something other than prescription drugs from CVS, it's only because of it's like an oh crap moment. Like, oh, I was supposed to buy this for the kids' activity this afternoon. I need to run to CVS real quick, and I know I'm going to pay an arm and a leg more than I would if I had just bought it on Amazon organized, but there's one in my town, and I have to get to CVS or Walgreens. So I'm sure other people have that experience too. The only time I really buy anything from CVS is when I have one of those oh crap moments because I feel unprepared and I know I'm going to get charged an arm and a leg. So their front of the house sales have been struggling. And then, you also do have competition on the pharmacy side from the likes of Amazon. And so no big surprise to me that these companies with a ton of real estate are struggling to make their brick and mortar businesses work.
If you can't make money at pharmacy, what are you? You're not a pharmacy, or at least not a profitable going concern type pharmacy.
Well, I don't think it's that they're not profitable. I think it's just that they're having a tough time growing.
The margins are thinner than they used to be. The culprit, and you guys know individual companies way better than I do. You talk about them every day. And I'm lazy, I should follow them better. But it's my understanding from talking to either you or Chuck Zada about this last time that the margins are shrinking fastest in pharmacy because of reimbursement issues, and I think they point that out in this article. Retail margins are sort of typical of retail, maybe a little higher. It's frustrating as a consumer when you go into CVS because they've got these convoluted rebate and pricing and coupon systems, and you're like, how many of these do I have to buy to get $5? How close am I to this? It's like a board game every time you go in there just to figure out what the heck you're going to pay. So it's not a great experience, really, for day-to-day shopping, right?
I think across the board, it's not a great experience.
So what are they? What are these things these days? The pharmacy business is struggling. Retail business, as you said, you'd only do it with a gun to your head. And what they call front of the store is actually 85% of the store. It's like everything right up to the pharmacy counter.
I also have to say, I'm sure this is a local experience. Is that right, by the way, my description
there? Is front of store sales like everything up to the pharmacy counter?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's like most of the store.
Most of the store. I'm sure
a lot of square footage.
I'm sure they break out their over-the-counter drugs as opposed to, say, grocery sales, which they also have. But yeah, everything else is front of the house. I don't need to print pictures anymore. I don't need a lot of these services that they offer. And then furthermore, fortunately for me, I'm not on any regular drugs that I have to pick up at CVS or Walgreens, nor is anybody in my family. So it's not like I'm going once a week. But it seems to me that every time one of my kids is sick and I have to go pick up a prescription, I'm waiting in a 15-person long line. And if I had to go get a weekly prescription,
of sick people.
If I had to go get a weekly prescription, you can be sure I would not be using walking into CVS as my method. I would be getting it delivered via one of these other pharmacies like the one that Amazon owns. And so to me, the only solution, the one that has always made sense for CVS to me, is their build out of these doctor's offices. I don't know if you've ever used one, but I've used them extensively. That's what I think is a successful model. I don't know what the margins look like, but I will go to a CVS. It's not like an urgent.
You're talking about Minute Clinic?
Yeah, the Minute Clinics.
Oh, okay.
I will use them extensively. Like if I know, hey, this is what I have a sneaking suspicion that I have the flu, and I would like to go get a test and then have somebody give me Tamiflu, I know I can go one-stop shopping at CVS, whereas I can't do that just about anywhere else. Or if I throw out my back again and I need some muscle relaxers, like, again, one-stop shop. I can go talk to somebody there. They can prescribe me the drug. I can go walk next door or, right within the same building and go get my muscle relaxers if I need that. Not that I throw out my back every week, but it's just an example.
Mr. Armstrong, good to see you again.
Yeah.
What is it this week?
Familiar sight over there. So that's the part that makes sense to me. But again, it's not as though doctors' offices are these thriving, immensely profitable institutions either. So it I don't know. It's a tough business model to see making work these days. Not that they're going to fail to exist, but merely that they're going to struggle to grow, I think, is the concern.
They just need to bite the bullet here and cut out about half their stores. I know their Walgreens is on that path.
Yeah, I mean,
it seems
for me personally, I know of at least 5 pharmacies in my town. There might be more.
And the ones they built, I live in Rentham. They built one on South Street. If you know the area, it's beautiful. But it's gigantic. It's got arena height, ceilings. And what were they thinking? Anyone who's been in there knows what I'm talking about. The ceilings are preposterously high, and I thought just the utilities alone. And the rest of the industry is now going in the exact opposite direction. What were these people thinking when they mapped this store out?
Don't have the answers.
And what are we going to put there?
Let's take a quick break. When we come back, a bit of stack roulette on the Financial Exchange.
The Financial Exchange Show podcast drops every day on Apple, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Hit that subscribe button and leave us a 5-star review. You're listening to the Financial Exchange Radio Network. Summer in New England is spectacular. Winter in the U.S. Virgin Islands is even better. St. Croix, St. Thomas, and St. John are 3 of the most incredible islands anywhere in the Caribbean, and their popularity has soared over the past 3 years. If you're ready for your next fabulous vacation, now's the time to check out the American Caribbean. Go to visitusvi.com, where you'll find all the information you need to book a trip that you'll never forget. The St. Croix Crucian Festival runs from December 26th to January 4th. Celebrate New Year's on St. Croix and enjoy world-class cuisine, pristine beaches, a wide variety of water sports, and some of the greatest musical acts the islands have to offer. Travel to and from New England is simple, and your stay will be hassle-free because this is the American Caribbean. There's no passport needed and no money to exchange. America's Caribbean paradise is waiting for you. Go to visitusvi.com and make your plans today. That's visitusvi.com. Elder life planning can be overwhelming, so make sure you're prepared, or you could make costly mistakes that affect your overall plan. Irrevocable trusts are the most common type of trust that folks use for financial protection, and while they can be complicated to create, they help keep your assets safe because they contain specific protections that many of us need, like the possibility of eliminating your estate taxes. Cushing & Dolan are experts in elder law and taxation, and they can devise a plan that covers you in every area where issues can arise. Their new guide is called Unlocking the Power of Irrevocable Medicaid Trusts. Learn more about how these trusts can benefit your family by calling 866-848-5699 right now. That's 866-848-5699. Or you can request the guide right now by visiting LegalExchangeShow.com. The proceeding was paid for, and the views expressed are solely those of Cushing & Dolan. Cushing & Dolan and/or Armstrong Advisory may contact you offering legal or investment services. Cushing & Dolan and Armstrong Advisory do not endorse each other and are not affiliated. Every single day, more than 2,000 U.S. companies face a cyber threat or attack. The Boston Red Sox in Fenway Park chose Centripetal as their official cyber network security partner to ensure the protection of their network and ballpark. Intelligence is the answer to protecting your network, and Centripetal is the global leader of intelligence-powered cybersecurity. The choice is yours. Are you going to be another one of those attacked companies? Or are you ready to experience a radical new cybersecurity solution? Find out why the Red Sox chose Centripetal at www.centripetal.ai.
Cardiovascular disease is the #1 killer of women,
taking the lives of 1 in 3.
That's more than all forms of cancer combined.
For too long, heart disease and stroke have taken the lives of the women we love.
But we're not giving up because we have something better,
stronger, more powerful.
We have each other.
When we come together and go red,
the more power we have against our greatest health threat.
Visit GoRedForWomen.org today to learn more.
Recent reports suggest that a record 4.1 million Americans may retire this year alone. Hi, this is Mike Armstrong from the Armstrong Advisory Group, and if you're one of them, you'll want to have a retirement plan in place that focuses on several objectives. When to actually retire is a very important one to consider. Retiring early while giving you more time to enjoy life after work also means you'll need your money to last longer. Retiring later may not give you as much time to enjoy life's pleasures, but you'll have more time to save money. It's important for your retirement plan to strike strike a reasonable balance, and our new guide may help. It's called A Day in the Life of a Retiree, and it's yours free by calling 800-393-4001. The guide discusses these issues and more, so please call 800-393-4001. Once again, 800-393-4001.
The proceeding was paid for by Armstrong Advisory Group, a registered investment advisor. Nothing in the ad or in any Armstrong guide is specific financial, legal, or tax advice. Consult your own financial, tax, and estate planning advisors before making any investment decisions. Armstrong may contact you to offer investment advisory services. Find daily interviews and full shows of the Financial Exchange on our YouTube page. Like us on YouTube and get caught up on anything and everything you might have missed. This is the Financial Exchange Radio Network.
The Financial Exchange has built an incredible partnership with the Disabled American Veterans Department of Massachusetts. We can't wait to take part in this year's DAV 5K, set for Saturday, November 9th at Fort Independence on Castle Island, and registration's now open. You can help our great American heroes by walking, running, or simply making a donation. Your gifts will support services such as the Veteran Advancement Program, which offers permanent and affordable housing opportunities for veterans and their dependents. Learn more at dav5k.boston. The DAV 5K Boston is presented by Veterans Development Corporation.
Time for a bit of stack roulette. What do you have for us, Mr. Fandetti?
You know, Mike, I'd forgotten about this. Every year, the federal government revises payroll growth estimates, and they do it about this time of year as of the previous March. So, you know, we say every month that, for example, last month, 114,000 new jobs. We learned a couple weeks ago that 114, this comes out with the unemployment number that we report in the first week of every month. We said 114,000 new jobs were created. We always say plus or minus 130 because the actual number could be a little bit below zero or much bigger. We point out that it's an estimate. The word statistic, we don't just throw that word around. It literally means sort of an estimate of a true value that we can't measure with the type of precision that we'd like. Well, once a year, the Fed adds or subtracts sometimes a large number of jobs from the estimated number of jobs through that March. So, for example, through this last March, the economy created, according to that payrolls number, when you just add up all the months, about 2.9 million jobs. We've got a revision coming tomorrow. Some banks are estimating, banks that have actual labor economists that study these things closely enough to, with confidence, make this type of assessment, estimate as many as 500,000 of those 2.9 million jobs could get wiped out. Some think, according to estimates, which I guess are credible because they have high accuracy relative to history, it could be closer to 600K. So we could see a big revision of payrolls, which in turn will taint the Fed's perception of how quickly the job market is weakening, and they wanted to affect some weakening. That's how, as you pointed out earlier, you get inflation down, but too much is a bad thing. Yeah. So we may learn something not only statistically interesting tomorrow, but really relevant for how big of a cut, if any, the Fed makes in about a month to its target rate and what it does by the end of the year.
And to your point, most experts who have looked at this are expecting a downward revision, like unlikely to go up.
Like a big one. Some of the big investment banks that have legions of PhD economists studying these things estimate, 500 to 600K reduction in that 2.9 million figure. And again, this gets a little convoluted because it's through last March. That's the revision period. Again, will give the Fed some better, hopefully, insight as to exactly how strong or not the job market has been.
More Americans don't want kids, and it's not just because of the money. According to the U.S. government, the fertility rate fell to a record low of around 1.6 births per woman in 2023. Societies need to maintain a fertility rate of about 2.1 births per woman in order to sustain the population. Then rolls through a whole bunch of different pieces here about how we stack up in the United States when it comes to government spending on children and a whole bunch of policies that you might consider and why people are saying that they don't want kids. Just information that I found interesting. Comparing the United States to almost 40 other countries in the OECD, only Turkey spends less per child as a percentage of their GDP. So that's government spending per child on daycares and healthcare, et cetera, et cetera. Daycare and preschool prices spiked by about 263% between 91 and 2024. I don't know how that compares to just general wages from 91 to 2024. And the estimated cost to raise a child in 2023 from birth to age 18 is now over $330,000, according to a Northwestern Mutual analysis. So the question becomes, would subsidizing a bunch of that stuff by the federal government, if you were trying to raise the fertility rate, do anything? And that's where I have a bit of a problem. Like, look, I've paid for these costs. I know how substantial they are. I'm not necessarily saying that we shouldn't do this, but go take a look at countries like Norway, countries like Italy, who do have massive programs in place to make child rearing more affordable. Generally haven't done much to impact the birth rate and the growth of our country. So is this a problem? Oh, hell yes. I mean, our entire Social Security and Medicare programs are based on the idea that we have a growing population. Recent data would basically insinuate that without much more immigration, we won't have a growing population. So if you don't fix this situation in some way, shape, or form, then yeah, Social Security, Medicare, they're going to blow up and get worse over the next several decades unless you reform them in some way, shape, or form. But I'm not sure that we have a solution to the problem, I guess would be my other point here.
No, incentives don't do much for fertility. It's been looked at, which is why it's odd to me that certain politicians, J.D. Vance comes to mind, advocates aggressive pro-family government policies. It's not really about money. Countries that have tried it, some with good motives, others, like Nazi Germany, with not particularly good motives.
Weren't terribly successful.
And those of us who are, what'd you say?
Not terribly successfully, I guess would be my
point. Well, I mean, it makes me uneasy because of their motives. But anyway.
That's all the time we have for today. Markets broadly down. We'll be back at it tomorrow for more Fed Talk and earnings.